So for this tutorial, I'm gonna pretty much focus on ListViews on Android. So if you open up Android Studio, your first page will be recent projects. So start a new project. Go ahead and click Start a New Project, and then you can give it a name. I'm going to leave it as my application. And so if we click Next, you get to choose the API you want to use, the level. So Android 2.3 is Gingerbread. Down here is where it tells you the percentage of devices that you'll support, but I don't think we need to go all the way back to 2.3. So if we use this drop-down menu, we can select anything up to current. And so I'm going to select Jelly Bean, and so that gives us 88%. So that's a pretty high number. So click Next and go into a blank activity. And actually for this, I think we'll start with an empty activity. So if you click Empty Activity and click Next, it'll ask you what you want your main activity to be called. And so main activity would work, and then it'll get a layout file. And I'll explain all that when we get into it. So go ahead and click Finish and let it build. Okay, so once you're loaded up, you can what I do is just get your virtual device started, and that way we can test it when we want to run the code. So if you go up to the top here, you'll see a little button that looks like a device. If you hover over it, it'll tell you it's the Avd Manager, which is Android Virtual Device. And if you click on it, it'll open this screen here. So Android Studio now deploys with a virtual device already created, and so you have the options to customize it, but what they give you is pretty good for what we need it for. So if you click it and just press this little play button, it'll start up. Mine actually takes a little while, so I started it already. Actually, I don't know if I did. Yeah, I did. I started it already, so I'm gonna let that go, but we can get into it. So when we open the project, we'll see the two files here. So you have your main activity.java, which is where we'll put our code, and then you have over here in layout activity main.xml, and so these are XML layouts. And with the XML layouts, you can do the design mode, which is what we'll do most of it, the layout in. But then you can switch over to text mode and make your customizations a little more specific, but we'll stay in design mode. And like I said at the beginning, I'm going to focus on ListViews initially. So once this gets up and running, I'm just going to put a list view in there, and then we'll go into the Java file, and I'll show you how to reference a list view and to load items into it, and then to handle on-click events. And so most apps that you see, when you have the the navigation drawer come out and it's got some menu items, those are lists. And so we're going to make a basic list, and then in future tutorials we'll expand on those lists and start making pretty in-depth and decent apps. So it's loaded. It says we have an issue here. I don't really care about it, so I'm going to close that out. Okay, so this is going to give you a text view to start. If you look over here, this tells you the layout components, and so the relative layout is what we'll use most of the time. I also like linear layouts, so we'll mix them. You can mix these all you want, but it gives you an initial text view and loads hello world into it. We don't need that, so go ahead and delete that. Alright. So now we have a blank screen. So if you go over here to the palette and you scroll down, you'll see a list view in containers. If you drag that over onto the device, it'll let you place it wherever you want. And these dotted lines, the green dotted lines, are anchors, and then the orange dotted lines are the layout boundaries based on the padding. So once that goes, so it'll fill the parent. So there's our list view, and it's got an ID of list view. small l and capital V, and that's important. So if you scroll down, you'll see that here. So ID of ListView, and these are the properties for the component. And this is important because when we go back to the Java file to reference it, we'll need this. And so we can do that now. So if you go to that main activity, all of this code is just done for you. And then the onCreate method is where we're going to do, most of the initialization and setup. And then there's an onResume, which if the activity goes into the background and comes back to the foreground, that's where we will resume state. So setContentView pulls this activity main file that we have here, and so we can access anything in this file by finding views by their ID. So to access this file, this component is a list view. So if you go into the text, you'll see it's a list view, capital L, capital V, and so that's what the component is. So we can access it that way. So if we say list view, capital L, capital V, call it anything you want. I'll just call mine list view is fine. You have to cast these because when you use the find view by ID, it returns a view, and every one of those components it inherits from view, but we have to cast it to get our list view. So if you cast this as a list view, then you could say this dot find view by ID, and I will explain that as we go. So find view by ID is a method that will return a view based on the ID in the activity. I'm sorry, in the layout file. So we have to get the ID, and so we'll use r.id. And then as we get more components, this list will grow. But for now, all we have is the list view. So we can just press enter, and now we have our access to the list view. So we'll go ahead and place a comment here, and it's grab a reference to the list view using the ID from the XML layout file. Okay. Next thing we need to do is make an adapter. So ListViews take an adapter, and that's what loads, the ListView items into the adapter. And so for now, we'll use, one of the default adapters just to make it easy, and then we'll grow on that. So first thing we need to do is initialize an adapter. And this is actually called an array adapter. And so to make an array adapter, we'll say array adapter. And so it's called an array adapter because this particular adapter takes an array, and it'll either take an array of whatever object you declare, or an array list. So for now, we're going to use an array. And so we'll say array adapter, and then you have to type it. So give it a type of string, the objects it'll take, and we'll call it adapter is fine. Equals new array adapter, and this takes a couple parameters. First one is context. So the context, we'll just use this, and in some cases we'll have to actually say main activity.this, but we're not going to do that right now. So right now we'll just say this is fine. Actually, just to keep things the same, we'll do that, main activity.this. Next one is the layout resource. Now, if you wanted to make your own, which we're going to do in the next tutorial, but in this one we're going to use Android's default layout. So we'll say android.r.layout.simple list item. Simple list item 1. And then we also have to give it a text view resource ID. So similar to how this list view has a resource ID, this layout here, the Android layout, also has a text view resource ID. So to access that, we'll say android.r.id this time, because we're actually looking for the ID and not the layout. id.text1 is the name of that one. And then we also have to give it items, but we don't have any items yet. So let's go ahead and declare an array of items. And these will be called menu items. It's fine. So we'll say string, like we did down here. We have to do an array of string objects. So we'll go ahead and declare the list of string objects, and these will be the menu items, so we'll call this menu items, it's fine, equals new string array, and then we'll just give it the menu items now, because we don't really need anything dynamic yet, just for the basics of a list view. So we'll just give it just 3 menu items is fine. So we'll say menu item 1, menu item 2, and I'm sure you guessed it by now, menu item 3. So now we have a string array of menu items. This string array has 3 elements, and each of these elements are here. Okay, so we will pass this menu items array into the adapter, and that could be the last parameter. So we'll call it menu items. So we pass menu items into the adapter. So this constructor takes these parameters. So the context is the activity. The resource is the layout, which is we're going to use the Android default. The text view resource ID is that text 1. And then the array of objects is menu items. So now we have to set the lists adapter. And so there's a super simple method to do that. We actually just call ListView.setAdapter. And then we can pass in adapter, and then that's done. And then if we run it now, we'll see these items. So let's do that. So I already loaded up. Hold on. I already loaded up my Android emulator, and so here it is. And so if I press the run button up here, so when we press the run button, it'll ask us what device do we want to use to run this. Here we go. So it'll ask us what do we want to use. We're going to use the emulator that we set up at the beginning. And then I'm going to check this just so it doesn't ask us this anymore, and I'll press OK. And then that'll install it on this little emulator here. And it'll show us our list with the 3 menu items. Now, this is the start. Right now we're going to handle clicks on these menu items, and then that'll wrap it up for this tutorial. So to do that, we'll go in here, and so you'll initially set you'll set an on-item click listener is what it's called. So on-item click listener. We'll set it on the actual list view. So we'll say ListView.set on item click listener, and that'll give you that. We'll just give it a new, and this is an adapter views on item click listener. So we'll just say it adapter view, and we don't really have to type it out. It's going to just recommend it to us. So we'll press enter, and then that'll give us this method on item click. The parameters that come in here by default are the parent is the list view, the view is the view that you clicked. Position is a position in our adapter's object array, and then long ID is the view's ID. Just to verify that, you can go in here. I'm actually not sure what the ID is. Row ID. Okay. Well, either way, we're not going to use that. So just for now, last thing. So just to acknowledge that the item was clicked, we'll do a toast. So to do a toast, and that'll take a context, and this is where we actually need to do main activity.this rather than just this. So that's why we did it up above as well. Main activity.this, and then the message to do, we'll do item clicked at position, and then we can give it position, and then it takes a duration. So toast has actual durations here, so we'll say length short, and then finally we'll just show it. And that'll wrap that up. So now if we run it again, it's not going to ask us this again. It's just going to build, and then it's going to just run automatically. All right, here it goes. And so now we have the same list, but since we set an on-item click listener, every time one of these items is clicked, it'll present a toast. So when we click item 2, we get at position 1, because the way elements work is you have 0, 1, and 2. So click item 1, it's 0. Click item 2, it's 1. And click item 3, it's 2. And that'll wrap it up for this tutorial. Next time we will add icons and customize the list items a little more. So thanks for watching.